Welcome back. Now to our first conversation. A survey carried out by Augusto revealed that 59% of bank customers sampled indicated that they've fallen victim to fraud. According to the survey, 41% said their accounts hadn't been compromised. However, the remaining had been victims through phishing emails, data breaches, unauthorized access to accounts through USSD, and others. Joining us now is Mr. Abiodun Ejaware, Head Information and Technology Development Bank of Nigeria. Joining us from our Abuja studio. Great to have you. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Ladi, and thank you for having me here today.
Fantastic. So, recently we've got some call-outs, of major banks by some customers on social media. Some of them claiming the recent one said about 4 million naira was wiped out of her account. And she said she doesn't know, how that happened. And the bank has said they do not also know how that happened, and they don't really have any responsibility with, returning, the said sum. So I'm wondering, is this a trend that we should be worried about, or is it just a blip?
Okay, so yes, I think it's a trend that we should be worried about. A lot more needs to be done around fraud and how we then manage fraud in the banking system. But I would also want to put this into context. We've seen over the years, especially last year, the volume of transactions that are being processed on the banking platforms have actually increased. Last year alone, NIPS brought out their report that as at November 2022, we had processed over 345 trillion naira worth of transactions on their instant payment platform, which, is that platform that moves money from one bank to another bank instantly. So it means that as we begin to grow and move customers to our digital platforms, transactions will grow, and then, frauds will happen. But interestingly, the ratio of fraudulent transactions have not drastically increased. It's just that because you are now doing more transactions on the digital platforms, then you also have more frauds happening. Customers will not want to be part of the statistics of people who had been defrauded. Another thing to note is that so last year, by half year of 2022, say on the same NIPS platform, the attempted fraud, which means customer actually lost value initially, but some were salvaged, was over 8 billion naira. Out of the 8 billion naira, 50% of that was salvaged, meaning another 50%, went to the winds. And you see fraudsters deploying different tactics just to ensure that where controls are put in place, they find ways to circumvent. But what I think needs to be done is for the banks to also look at how do my customers behave on my platforms, and then what are the right things to do, instead of just saying that, okay, if you compromise your details, there is nothing I can do. So I think is that empathy for the customer that needs to happen, and it needs to reflect in everything that they are doing on their platforms and how they even manage fraud in its entirety.
But looking at the situation right now, so who's responsible really? Because obviously at the end of the day, some of these the deposits are insured. So shouldn't the customers be reimbursed?
Okay, so you would see in some other countries where if there is a fraud, the first thing to be done is that you give the customer back money, and then you go about investigating. Maybe it's a card chargeback fraud or whatever, and then when you resolve it, you get your own money as the financial institution. That is something that I think should begin to happen in Nigeria. Yes, customers have responsibilities in using the digital platforms for transactions. However, banks are the custodian of the funds, so they need to be a lot more creative in educating the customers, very importantly. So you see, customers who are new to the platform or who are not hygienic enough in the use of the platforms fall victim. So, for example, a lot of transactions that, frauds have happened. It's basically on mobile platforms and then on the web platform. Mobile platform meaning your mobile applications, which is on your phone. And then you have your web platforms, which you log in maybe through your computer or your handheld devices. The security of those devices is very critical for any customer, because if somebody has your phone, the person literally can own every bank account that you have. So how do you safeguard your phone? How do you ensure that there is no authorized access, even for your own, your relatives, people who are very close to you, you intrinsically you will trust. Once it comes to money, you don't know the pressure that the next person is going through. So you need to, not just your card, but your phone, because from your phone, a lot of transactions can be done. And also on the web platform too, that's the internet banking platform, a lot of transactions. Those two platforms are actually the platforms with the highest number of fraudulent cases. And then you have insider collusion. Yeah, it happens here and there. But except for maybe Q1 last year, where we had a big one, there hasn't been. Yes, they happen. Insider collusion meaning people in the bank coming together to collude and then defraud a customer. But the major amount of frauds that we've experienced are on the mobile applications and on the web platform.
But
so a lot of education needs to be done. A lot of tweaking needs to be done on the platforms to ensure that we build fraud scenarios in building the platforms. We have to build fraud. We have to build the likelihood that fraud can happen, but the customer experience still has to be great. So banks need to be creative and ingenious in creating platforms or having platforms where, yes, you can understand the behavior of your customer. If the customer, at a particular time in the month will not transact in a particular way, then you need to validate. You need to validate, and you need to validate in a way that makes the transactions seamless. So, in a nutshell, education has to be done for the users of the platform. How do you safeguard your details? Radio jingles happen. You have newspaper adverts. You have all of that, but the banks have the responsibility to the customers. You are the one who you have their deposits. So you need to find ways to reach out to them, to let them know the right way to use their platforms.
Right.
And then also your platform has to be nimble and agile enough to ensure that you take the user behavior into consideration as they are transacting on your platform. Okay. So I think it's both ways. One, the user has responsibilities. Two, the banks also, because they are the ones who are warehousing your money for you to transact with, they also have the responsibility. But I think the banks have to now take a big step, because we need to instill confidence in the system. CBN is trying to make sure that most things are done electronically. It's cheaper for us as an economy. It makes it better for us to have insight and even make progress as an economy. But the banking system will need to come together and ensure that we take customers into considerations, even their flaws and the likely things that can happen to them. We can use technology to shape how they will behave and make sure that we display empathy in how they also transact.
And talking about users, of these platforms, what tips, do you have for, customers using, these platforms? I've heard some people, say that they would rather not have an ATM card. They don't want any internet banking access, to their account, so that there's no risk of them being hacked. Is that the way to go?
Well, I wouldn't suggest that, because if you then don't have any channel through which you can transact, you're just warehousing funds in your account. Then when you now need to transact, what do you do? Do you go into the banking, or that's applying pressure on the banks? No bank would want, a lot of customers coming to their banking halls. So I think the most appropriate way to have this done is, one, For example, I have my card. Is not linked to every account that I have with a particular bank. So I have, so you need to be creative as to what works for you. My card is linked to my current account. If I need to transact to a particular limit, I have that exposure. So it's taking personal responsibility of your funds. But to say you would now do away with the platforms totally, I think it's counterproductive because they've been created to help you. So you need to find a creative way that will work for you. Then you also need to be security conscious. So keeping, even though, security analysts will tell you that passwords are now useless, but at least ensure that you keep safe passwords. Ensure that you use biometric authentication as much as you can, because with that, you then don't have to fall prey to when somebody hacks your platform. Ensure that multi-factor authentication is enabled, even if it's an option from your bank. For you, by default, you should take advantage of what multi-factor authentication brings on the digital platforms. It's very, very important. And then if you don't do huge transactions often, maybe you then need to talk to your bank and make sure that you have a limit set, after which you need some extra validations. So these are some of the creative things that, as a user of digital platforms from banks, you can have in place. It helps you safeguard your funds. It helps you sleep at night. And then another thing that customers should also take note and make sure that they do properly, it's your notification channels. So, for example, your SMS, which will come to your phone, email. Make sure that you have your functional phone numbers registered with the banks. And then if you change phone numbers for any reason, make sure that you do that update, because when transactions are going through, or maybe there is a second level authentication, an OTP, that's a one-time password that is going to be shared. It goes to your phone. Most banks today, if you're going to change your devices, they try to manage the risk, reduce how much transactions you can do instantly before they scale up. So it's good that, and then they would also pretty much share, details with you on your notifications channels. So your email address has to be the one that you're using. Your phone numbers, also the registered phone number has to be the one that you are with. That way, notifications, when they come to you, either it's an attempted fraud or you are trying to do transactions, you're able to do them.
All right. So, we've heard of, some customer accounts, being compromised, and, sometimes the banks say they don't know where these funds, are going to. So I'm wondering, do the banks really not know, where these funds go to? Is there no way to, trace these funds? Because it's within the system.
Yeah, like you rightly said, is within the system. So if I bank with Bank A, for example, and the money leaves from my account to another account in Bank A, it's still within the system. You can trace it until the money leaves that other account where the transfer was done to from my account, maybe through cash withdrawal or POS or whatever. So that way, that's a dead, because beyond that, you really can't trace that. But if it's transfer from one account to the other, then pretty much you can trace it, even if it's outside your bank. So if an instant transfer happens from a Bank A to another account in Bank B, Bank A knows which account it was transferred to. Bank B knows which account did I receive money from, and all of these. They can actually, so it takes effort, but I think for the customer's sake, it's also something that needs to be done. But once the money leaves the banking system, it's been converted to maybe cash, or it's been converted to a service, then it becomes a lot more difficult to trace. But that's in itself is a criminal offense, and then it can be escalated to the to the police or any other person who can trace for that. But as long as the money is in the banking system, yes, you can trace.
All right. I want to thank you so much, Mr. Abiodun Ijaore, Head IT Development Bank of Nigeria. We do hope, customers don't, magically lose funds, anymore in this system. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ladi. Thank you for having me.